This is the second video in a series on formatting works cited entries. In this particular lesson, we're going to be talking about periodicals. In part one, we talked about books. Now we're going to be talking about periodicals. So what is a periodical? That's a reasonable question to ask. A periodical is a publication that contains articles written by different contributors. So it's similar to an anthology then, which is a book, but unlike a book, a periodical is not a one-off publication. It is published serially over time. It could be published daily, it could be published weekly or every couple of weeks, or monthly or quarterly, or just once a year, and so on. As is the case with books, there are different kinds of periodicals. And as a college student, it is important to know the difference between popular and scholarly sources. Articles in popular sources are typically written not by experts, but journalists reporting information for a general audience. Articles in scholarly sources, by contrast, are written for an audience of scholars and experts and are therefore more valuable to college students. When you're doing your research, you want to try to rely more on scholarly sources, use more scholarly sources than popular sources. Browsing through a supermarket or a gas station, you might be able to tell the difference between a newspaper and a magazine. For example, you might recognize that on the left is a newspaper. There are articles on the front page. A magazine doesn't have articles on the front page, but it gives you a kind of contents of what you might find inside. But would you know a scholarly academic journal if you saw one? I'll give you a picture of one here. This is the Eugene O'Neill Review, appropriate because we're reading Eugene O'Neill in Unit 2. We'll come back to this in just a moment. So unless you're holding the periodical in your hands, it is not always easy to tell what kind of periodical it is. So here are some clues to help you. Issue dates, issue numbering, and images and advertising. This will help you to distinguish between popular and scholarly sources. So because periodicals are serial publications, the date of publication should appear somewhere on the cover or contents pages. A periodical published with a full date, that is a day, a month, and a year, is likely a daily newspaper, whereas periodicals with monthly dates are often magazines. Academic journals, however, take longer to produce and are typically published 4 times a year or quarterly, usually by season: fall, winter, spring, and summer. Sometimes they might be published just twice a year or even just once a year. Many periodicals have volume and issue numbers, and often they're printed right on the cover. The volume encompasses all the issues published in a calendar year. An academic journal published quarterly or every 3 months or so will have 4 issues per volume. And then issue numbering starts over with each new volume. So for example, volume 55, issues 1, 2, 3, 4, volume 56, issues 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. Finally, popular sources often contain more images than scholarly sources do. Mass market periodicals, like this Fangoria magazine from my childhood here, they generate revenue by selling advertising space, and they rely on strong visual appeals to attract target audiences. Since academic journals are nonprofit and highly specialized, you're not going to find an academic journal in the magazine rack of a supermarket. They don't have a lot of advertising, and they don't budget for printing expensive images. So the Eugene O'Neill Review here, compared to my Fangoria magazine, looks pretty plain and kind of boring. So let's talk about some of the features I just mentioned and how to locate them on the cover of this journal. So because periodicals like this one contain articles by multiple contributors, they have an editor, or sometimes a team of editors, responsible for assembling that material and overseeing the publication process. An editor's name may appear on the cover or title page. The editor's name is not on the cover of this particular issue. But if it is, it doesn't really matter because you never include the editor in a works cited entry for a periodical. That is a common mistake that students make. Academic journals are often published by university presses, but publishers are not required for a works cited entry either. Again, when you're listing periodicals on your works cited page, you do not need to include the name of the publisher. The volume and issue number should appear on the title page or contents page somewhere. This happens to be volume 36, issue number 2. And the year of publication should appear in the same area as the volume and issue numbers. In most cases, there will be a month or a season for that particular issue. Like it'll say winter 2015. This one doesn't have a month or a season, but these should be included in your works cited entry if they have them. So let's go back to the online writing lab. And to see the rules for formatting different kinds of periodicals, go to the OWL website and click on the MLA guide button, just like you did, just like I showed you in the first video for books. And then you'll see the index for MLA formatting and style guide on the left. And this time, instead of clicking MLA works cited page books, you should click MLA works cited page periodicals. And when you do, it's going to take you to a page that looks like this. And just like with books, you will see different kinds of periodicals listed. Here we see an article in a magazine, and then an article in a newspaper. And you can keep scrolling down and see different kinds of articles. Some of the ones that are most important for college students: an article in an academic journal, an editorial or letter to the editor, and finally, a review. Now, this one is really important because in Unit 2, you're going to be looking for reviews. It's going to be very important that you know how to list reviews on your works cited page. A review is a short article in which the writer uses his or her expertise to make an informed judgment about someone else's work, such as, for example, a book, a movie, or a musical performance. And you'll be looking for reviews of Eugene O'Neill's Long Day's Journey into Night a little later in this unit. So the works cited entry for a periodical includes much of the same information as you need for an anthology or reference book. The author's name followed by a period, the title of the article followed by a period, the title of the container, which would be the title of the book, or in this case, the title of the periodical, followed by a comma. And then you're also going to need the page numbers of the article followed by a period. Again, unlike works cited entries for books, for periodicals, you do not need to include the names of editors or publishers. However, works cited entries for periodicals include some important additional information that you didn't need for books and didn't exist for books. That would be the volume number, the issue number, and the publication date, in that order, and all separated by commas. And where do they go in the works cited entry? They go right after the container and before the page numbers. So below, this is a basic works cited entry for an article taken from an academic journal. Take a moment, pause, take a look at this, and look at how it's, examine how it's constructed. We see the name of the author first, and then inside quotation marks, we see the title of the article. And then we see the container, which is the title of the periodical in which that article appeared. And then on the next line, notice my nice clean hanging indent there. On the next line, we have the volume, the issue number, the publication date, and then the page numbers. So I want to say a few things about that line highlighted in yellow. There's a lot going on there. I want to talk about it a little bit more detail. First of all, do not spell out volume or issue number. Don't spell out the words volume or issue. You always abbreviate them. Volume is abbreviated VOL period, and issue number is abbreviated NO period. Do not capitalize them. Do not capitalize them. Sometimes what happens is when you type the period in after your abbreviation, the autocorrect will want to take the V or the N and capitalize it. You have to catch that and make sure that it doesn't do it, because that is an error. The issue date might include the day, month, and year. However, most academic journals just use the month or season, fall, winter, spring, or summer, followed by the year. Abbreviate months of more than 4 letters. So there's a list of them for you. The only one that is abbreviated with 4 letters is September. All the others are abbreviated with 3. And May, June, and July are not abbreviated at all. After the publication date, you have a comma, and then the page numbers for your article, followed by a period. And that is a complete works cited entry for an article from an academic journal. So let's finish by seeing how quickly you can spot 7 errors in this example. You may pause it for a moment, pause the video, take a look at this, and see how many you can spot. Okay, let's go through them together. First of all, the title of the article is not in proper title case. That is mistake number 1. Number 2, the quotation marks are backwards. Notice the title of the article has opening, closing quotation marks, or quotation marks, but it does not have closing quotation marks because the writer got them backwards here. The container has not been italicized as it should be. That's mistake number 3. Volume should not be capitalized. That's mistake number 4, and that's a particularly common one. Issue should be abbreviated as number, NO period. The month was not correctly abbreviated. And the last mistake, number 7, the period should be after the PP. It's an abbreviation and it was left out. So if you found all 7 of those on your own, you're in good shape. If you didn't find any of them, you need to make sure that you study a little bit more before the exam that will cover the content of these videos. So that concludes part 2 of this series on formatting works cited entries. The next one, we will talk about electronic sources. See you next time.